So hi and welcome to today's video. So today I'm going to be comparing 5 different snow foams in 4 categories and some quite popular names in this group. So the first one we're starting with is Bilt Hamber Auto Foam. We've also got Bilt Hamber Touch-Less as well, Wax Planet 8 Below, Autobrite Magifoam and Squid Ink Alkafroth. So all these products were purchased myself except for Alkafroth, which was kindly sent for review a few months ago, and I was really impressed with it, so thought I'd see how it stacked up against some of the bigger names out there. So first we're starting off with thickness and dwell time. So I applied all these products in an MJJC Foam Cannon Pro, rinsed it out in between, and I applied them all at the recommended dilution ratios by the manufacturers, so the info for that will be in the description. But here we're starting off with the 2 Bilt Hamber ones, and you can see that they both do have a relatively thin consistency and notoriously don't have the best dwell time, so I'll show you all that at the end when we compare them. Next we've got Wax Planet 8 Below, so apologies here that there was a patch where I missed with the foam cannon. There wasn't too much in the lance itself and I was tilting it, so that's why, but don't worry, you'll be able to kind of see the dwell times compared at the end. We've also got Autobrite Magifoam, which is notoriously a very thick snow foam, and you can tell that here it was really thick. And finally we've got Squid Ink Alkafroth, which again is a very thick snow foam. I'd say it wasn't quite as thick as Magifoam, but very, very close. So here is what the panels look like after 6 minutes of dwell time. So it kind of goes in order of how well they stuck to the panels. It was very, very difficult to separate Magifoam and Alkafroth, both clinging quite well, but having asked a few different people for their opinions on the photos, it was generally received that Magifoam was on there a little bit more. So for the overall results of this category, we've got Autobrite Magifoam coming in top, Squid Ink Alkafroth was very, very closely followed, then Wax Planet 8 Below, and I'd say that Bilt Hamber Touch-Less was slightly better than Auto Foam at dwelling. Now we're moving on to cleaning ability. So again, I applied these at the top concentrations of the manufacturer's recommended dilutions, so all the info for that will be in the description. Now I split the car into different sections so we could compare them, and then essentially just try to aim for that section and then just use low pressure rinsing to get any sections that I've missed. I gave them all a 5-minute dwell time and then rinsed them off, and did each section individually, rinsing the panel in between so we could see the results here. So I repeated this process on 3 different vehicles on 3 separate days, but using the same concentrations, just mixed up individually, just so I could get the results as reliable as possible here. And I let the panels air dry, so I had a good inspection of the paintwork myself and then took photos to kind of show you really how much traffic film had actually been lifted by each product. So starting off with Alkafroth here, I would say that this one was a standout on this panel in particular. Wax Planet 8 Below did quite well as well. I'd say following that was probably Auto Foam. Then I'd say that Touch-Less and Magifoam were fairly similar in this case. On to the next photo here, and similar kind of results. I would say that Alkafroth did the best here again, but then I'd say that Auto Foam probably did slightly better on this panel than Wax Planet did. And again, I'd say that the weaker ones here were Magifoam and Touch-Less. So I also repeated this on a car with very heavy traffic film. And you can see that the photo here and really sort of close inspection of the paintwork, there wasn't really any difference between any of them. They all struggled on very heavy traffic film on an unprotected vehicle. The previous photos were on vehicles that still had some kind of paint protection on there. So in terms of the overall results here, I'd say that Alkafroth did the best here across all the panels, except for the one that was really, really dirty. And then I would say that Wax Planet and Auto Foam did the next best, but I couldn't really separate them between each other. I think they were quite even. Then I would say the same for Touch-Less and Magifoam, were just falling a little bit behind, but not huge differences across the board between any of them really. Next, I wanted to look at the effect on LSP. Thought that it would be a good factor to consider here. So I tested this using a wax and a sealant, so I'm going to show you what it looked like with the wax first. So this is Dojo Juice Blue Velvet for anyone that's interested. So it's a calm Nuba wax, but it is a little bit of a hybrid. Now I sprayed the surface using each chemical and gave them an equal dwell time. Now the reason I did this is because sort of rinsing out the foam cannon 5 times and doing this test multiple rounds was just not really practical. So I essentially worked backwards and looked at the panel impact ratios for each one to make it as fair as possible, so it would actually be what it would be applied using your foam cannon, not what the recommended dilutions are in the foam cannon, if that makes sense. So I tried to make it as fair as possible and use even coating to make sure that all the panels were fully coated and it was fair in that respect. So here you can see the kind of impact it was making after multiple rounds. Now, for me, the standout here was Wax Planet 8 Below. Didn't really seem to be having too much of an impact on that wax. Bilt Hamber Touch-Less as well wasn't doing too badly. I would say that Squid Ink was probably next, and then the Autobrite one coming in last there, and Auto Foam did have a reasonably significant impact on this wax as well. So you can see that a little bit when I'm sheeting the water here. The speed at which the water's sheeting helps to indicate how well that performance of the wax is doing. So here, as I said, Wax Planet was definitely doing the best, I'd say, followed by Touch-Less, Squid Ink, and then Bilt Hamber Auto Foam, and then Autobrite Magifoam pretty much killed it off. So here I wanted to look at the effects on sort of ceramic infused kind of sealant products. So here I'm using Garage Therapy Sigma, which is kind of like a hybrid QD. So that was what the water behaviour looked like originally, and here's after round one. Now, some kind of interesting results here. I would say again that Wax Planet generally did the best, and sort of the sealant underneath kind of clung onto that water behaviour a little bit more, even when that was applied. Whereas the ones that did well against waxes didn't necessarily do well against sealants. So I think most noticeably, Autobrite did better here than it did against the wax, and I'd say that Auto Foam did as well. Touch-Less seemed to be having more of an impact here on the sealant than it did on the wax, particularly in comparison to Auto Foam. So it kind of raises that question, if you are using certain types of paint protection primarily, say you only use waxes, you only use ceramic infused products, sealants, things like that, then maybe this is going to be something that you might want to consider, because the results weren't particularly clear cut in terms of which was better in the paint protection. It wasn't even across both waxes and sealants. So you can see here, kind of after round 8, now I had to bin the tape at this point because it had given up, got blasted away on round 8. So here you can still see the different positioning, but I'd say Wax Planet was breaking the water up more quickly. Autobrite and Auto Foam were doing reasonably well as well, and I'd say that the Squid Ink and the Touch-Less product weren't doing quite as well here. So I wanted to combine the scores for the wax and the sealant into kind of an overall effect on LSP, just to avoid putting too much weight on it in the overall scores. Now, Wax Planet was a clear winner, it won in both categories. However, for the others, because they performed differently, when I actually compared and added up the points for wax and sealants, they all scored the exact same, which was a little bit inconvenient because I hoped that it would provide something a little bit more definitive. So I had to all award them second place because there was no other fair way of doing it. So the final category that I wanted to look at here was the price, and the price per use, and also the price if you purchased a 5 litre bottle. So here we can look at what they actually cost if you do purchase a 5 litre bottle. So Auto Foam and Touch-Less are definitely the cheapest here, and then Alkafroth by Squid Ink is the most expensive. So perhaps more importantly, I wanted to look at the actual cost per use, and this one was a little bit more difficult to work out because Auto Foam and Touch-Less work on panel impact ratio, whereas the other three just say add this amount to your foam lance. So I had to do a little bit of an estimation here. So generally, in a 1 litre foam cannon, most people seem to be adding around 200ml, and that's generally what I go for. Whereas with the others, the top concentration of those would be around 100ml. So I think you could probably go a bit higher with the Bilt Hamber ones, but I think this is generally what people are using. So here we can see that Wax Planet was the cheapest, followed by Autobrite and then Squid Ink. Auto Foam was very closely following that, but you might use a little bit more than that if you are going for a high panel impact ratio, which in that case you'd probably be using closer to 300-400ml even. So here are the overall scores, and it was Wax Planet 8 Below that performed the best across the board and came out with top points here. However, the scores were very, very close, and I wanted to include this table because of course there's going to be categories that are more important to you than others. So you should take these overall scores and rankings with a pinch of salt and look at the testing and see what's important to you. Now, I know the Auto Foam and Touch-Less ones didn't do quite as well, and that might come as a shock to some people. They had weaker categories, and essentially when you're rating them across the board, they were always going to suffer in this circumstance. Now, I don't want the Bilt Hamber fans out there to get upset about it. You know, if you enjoy using this product, use this product. I've used it for a long time, Auto Foam in particular, and I do absolutely love it. So I think what this test did show is that these 5 snow foams are all very good. So it is splitting hairs a little bit. If you do own one and you enjoy using it, then that's absolutely fine, and continue to do that. So please let me know in the comments which one you like the look of out of them all, which categories are important to you, and if you've tried any and how you got on with them. So thanks very much for watching this video, and I'll see you next time.